Hi there, this is Linda and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be putting together my Project Life spread for March 16th through March 22nd, 2026, and I'm working with supplies for my stash. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, so this was a busier week than the last few weeks. If you've been watching my videos in order, you know that the past few weeks I wasn't really taking a ton of photos. I was very stressed and upset and just going through a rough time. And when I do that, I tend to just not take that many photos, which is totally fine. It's just life. But I struggled to fill my spreads those weeks. Well, this week, that is not the case because I have a lot of photos here. Part of that is I went to Saugerties, which is a small town in upstate New York near where I live. It's, about an hour away to meet up with a few of my friends. And so I have a couple photos from that. I have some photos from work. I have some pumpkin photos. I really think I need to change the blade in my trimmer because these photos did not trim out super well. If you were paying attention when I trimmed my photos in the beginning, I had this photo. This is actually for next week. I just needed to fill the page, so I'm putting that one off to the side. But I do have a decent amount of photos here to fill, and yeah, that's a lot. I think I might have printed too many, but I want to do some stash busting this week, and what I did was I pulled over some of these craft tags from my stash and thinking I could use these for my journaling, maybe with some large stamping. And I have 3 stories from the weekend. So Sunday is this photo and this. Saturday is this photo and a story. And then I could maybe put pumpkin like right here. Friday is the stuff with my friends. So I'm trying to figure out how I want to kind of arrange these things. Maybe I will put this stuff for my friends up here because all these photos and that photo are from that, and then put the Sunday right here, and then this photo is also from that, and I can do like a filler. And then on this side I can do Saturday, and then I don't want 2 pumpkin photos together. Then I was gonna do like a journaling about work maybe, and then just like other stories. Okay, so then I have space for a filler card and a title card. I also need to put something behind these. So I was thinking I could use my scraps and kind of go through paper scraps for that. And then I'm gonna go through my stash to pick some cards for those. I think I'm gonna do the title card and the filler card first so that I have a color scheme that coordinates, and then I'll pull from my scraps of paper to do some backgrounds here. And then I'm probably gonna do some large stamping on each one, do my journaling, and then pull some sort of embellishment. But I think that is a good setup. Now this was kind of a shorter introduction than I have to a lot of my spreads, but what I'm gonna do is go through those while I do the voiceover and kind of fill this one in. I do anticipate this one coming together pretty quickly, which is kind of what I was hoping for this morning because I have some other projects I want to do. Sometimes you'll tell in my videos I'm just trying to get the spread put together, going pretty formulaic, pretty quick. Sorry, this is bothering me. It needs to be trimmed. And other times I will be just kind of enjoying the process. Not that I don't enjoy the process when I do a quicker spread, but sometimes I just have maybe like an hour to craft and I don't have all day. And so in that case, I am going to do a little bit more formulaic approach. So even if I'm not working with a kit, I can still do that with stash supplies by pulling something from my stash like this as a jumping off point. So I'm gonna go ahead, put you guys on voiceover and get this one put together. Okay, so like I said, this spread does come together pretty quickly. My first step was to go over into my Project Life card stash, and I have a video sharing how I organize my Project Life cards. I'll link that in the description box below. But I have them in various categories, and the 3x4 especially I have based on theme and whether they are a filler versus a journaling card. So those were my filler spring themed cards that I went through first. And then this stack here is for people. So friends and family and significant other. And actually, no, I think it's just friends and family. And so I'm going through this one to find a card to be a filler card for my day with my friends. And I thought that this would be a good time to use one of these more specific journaling cards. So whenever I'm trying to use products from my stash, I always want to use the most specific product that I can, if possible. So what I mean by that is if there's a card that says good times with friends, and there's another card that says this was fun, if the good times with friends card fits my story, I will default to using that card because it's going to be harder to use it in the future because I can only use it to tell stories about times with friends. If there's a card that says this is fun, in contrast, I can use that for pretty much any story that was fun, which is a lot of things, including times with friends, but also beyond that. So that's what I mean by trying to use a more specific sentiment. And I do that for project life cards, embellishments, everything. I just always default to the most specific one that works. And it also helps with the decision-making process. So now I'm working on pulling out some papers from my pattern paper scrap stash, and I have been working on a craft room cleanup, and part of that is realizing that I have a little bit of an overflow of scraps. I threw away a lot of scraps that I had saved that were really old, and I felt like I was never really going to get to them, but I do have scraps in a variety of places. So I have a separate video. It's a little bit older, sharing my scrap organization process, but essentially I have an accordion style folder that organizes scraps based on colors. And I have that video shares that. And then I also have this dumping bin here. And this bin is where I put new scraps because if I try to set up a system where I have to sort my scraps into my accordion folder after every single project I do, I'm not going to do it. It's just too much work to keep up with it. So what I do instead is I stick them in here. And when this bin gets full, I pull them out of here and put them into my accordion folder. You can see this bin is pretty full. And I need to do that, and that's probably something I will do fairly soon after my craft room cleanup is complete. But right now, I'm just working from scraps in here. And I could have pulled out the accordion folder and gone through all the blue and green ones because you can see I'm going with a color scheme here. But instead, I just decided to use some from this recent bin instead. And sometimes I do that. Sometimes I use the accordion folder one. I don't really have any rhyme or reason, but the goal is to use up my scraps. Okay, so now I want to do some alpha stamping. So I pulled over my stamp organization binder and looked at the alpha options, and I selected this one. I have to say I have a million alpha stamps because I really, really love stamping alphas, but most of them are really large and too big for most project life cards. And then I have a lot of small ones, which are great for smaller sentiments, but not for titles and project life. There really aren't that many stamp sets that are good for titles on project life cards. So if anyone makes stamp sets, please make more alphas that are about this size because I would really appreciate it. So this one is an older one from Kelly Perky, and it is a tall, narrow alpha, which gives me the ability to write a little bit of longer words on these tags. I needed to be able to write words that have, I don't know, like 7 letters, I think. But if I had used a larger stamp set, I would have been limited to like 3 letters per tag or splitting my words onto multiple rows, which would have taken up more space than I wanted to because I wanted space for journaling. So you can see my process for stamping here is I write out all the words that I need to stamp on that sticky note, and I figured out the center, and I'm stamping from the center out on each one. I'm using black StazOn ink, and I'm just doing each word not individually, but I'm stamping them all at once so that if I need, for example, the I on multiple cards, I'm just going to do the I on all of the cards at the same time, and it just makes it a little bit quicker and easier. And I kind of find it to be a little bit of fun to try to figure out what letter to do next. It makes it into a little bit of a silly game. So I am now going to work on putting these on my background papers. So I'm going to just use some rolling adhesive and adhere each of these tags to my background. So at this point, I'm kind of deciding which one I'm going to put on which background and where they are going to go on the spread. And then I'm just going to trim off the bottom of the tag, and that gives me some space for journaling.
I wanted to adhere them to the backgrounds first before I did the journaling so I know where the end is to know where to stop writing, because if I journaled on the tag first, you can see it would go too long. So I'm just going ahead and adhering all of these down, deciding which one's going to go where, and figuring out, which background is going to go on each one. You can see from the backgrounds that I've selected there a range of neutrals and blues/greens, which is kind of the color scheme I was going for in this spread with the browns. I think it was kind of a calmer color scheme, which I really liked. There's a lot going on in my photos, so having a calmer background or color scheme of my products really helped make this spread kind of more cohesive with all those various colors in my photos. If I was going to do it over again, I'm not sure I would use this dark green paper. I feel like it's a little bit darker than all the other ones, but I really just kind of wanted to use scraps and I didn't want to spend too long digging through the bin. And honestly, it comes together looking fine, so there's no reason to overthink. I'm now going to do my journaling. I'm not going to do all of them at once, but I'm going to do quite a few of them. And I'm using the Uniball 10.38. This is my favorite gel pen at the moment. I have gone through quite a few gel pens, so if you've purchased one in the past that I recommended, I still stand by all of the ones that I used in the past, but I definitely go through phases. And this one I really like because it's slightly thinner. So if you want a more fine point, this one is definitely ideal for that. But it is also very, very dark black, which I like. I struggle when there's a gel pen or ballpoint pen that is not true black. So this one is definitely very black. So I like that. And I use it a lot in my journaling when I want to use a gel pen as opposed to a fountain pen. So I am just rearranging the cards here. Oh, so also about the pen, I'm using a chunky barrel one. At the very beginning, I used a narrow barrel one. They're the same pen. It's just I prefer the chunky barrel one. So if you want them, but you don't want the chunky barrel, there's two options. And I'll link those in the description box below. I'm continuing my journaling here. So like I said in the intro, I'm journaling about a few different stories. So I have 3 specific stories this week. I have Saturday, which was just a busy day. So instead of breaking those stories apart, I decided to just do a card and say, this is what happened on Saturday. I don't do that super often in Project Life because I prefer to lump my stories together based on theme. And you'll see that in some of my other cards here. But instead, this one is just going to be, this is what happened Saturday. Then on Sunday, Summer came over, so I put a card about her and just what, just thoughts about her coming over and what we were doing and all of that. Friday, I went out with my friends, so I stamped friends and journaled about that. And then this card here that I'm working on is a themed card called Work. So this one, I'm just journaling about all of the stories from the week that related to work. So just generally, work is super busy. It's been a busy season for a very long time, but it keeps getting worse. And we also had a birthday party for my boss at work, which was a little strange because we don't normally do birthday parties. I journaled a little bit more about that in my journal. It was kind of fun, but kind of overwhelming. But I did take a photo of my cake, my slice of cake, so I have that in the spread as well. Finally, for my last journaling card, I'm creating a bullet point list of stories from the week. And I usually like to do this in most of my spreads where I just include these micro stories from the week. And the way I remember these is I use my Take a Note. And if you're not familiar with that, I do have flip through videos every month where you can see my Take a Note spreads. So I will link the last one of those so that you can see what my spreads look like in my Take a Note. But essentially during the week or usually on Sunday, I write down micro stories from every day and kind of just what I did. And so I have it as a reference when putting together Project Life or other scrapbook layouts. I just use some enamel dots to create bullet points, which is something I do pretty frequently. I have quite a few enamel dots. I get a lot of them from Cocoa Daisy. I don't think these ones are Cocoa Daisy though. I think these are older. I'm just trying to use up older pieces in my stash. So now I'm going to decide what embellishments I want to use. I grabbed this chipboard sticker sheet of chipboard hearts, and I'm just going to use them all up. The colors kind of go with the spread. One of them has that darker red on it, which matches that ravioli, or it's not ravioli. I keep looking at that picture and thinking it's ravioli. It is Taiwanese dumplings, definitely not ravioli. So it matches the colors of that. So I'm thinking that it can go with that one. And I'm just pairing these with some white word phrase strips from my stash. I'm adding a word phrase strip and a chipboard heart on various photos and places throughout the spread. I also added one of the word phrase strips on the bottom of that friend's journaling card because there was just a little bit extra space at the bottom, and I thought it just added something and made it look more complete. Here I'm adding it on top of the dumplings, and that other one on top of me and pumpkin, using the red and yellow one with the dumplings because the colors were perfect and they were the perfect, it was just the perfect embellishment for that photo, and that's kind of why I decided to use those. And I just wanted to use them all up. So that is another sticker sheet that I can put in the trash as completed. Definitely the goal with my stash busting. At this point, I decided there was still something missing, so I went back to my stash of word phrase strips and found this sheet that is this like teal color, and it was actually from a March Stories by the Month, and the spread takes place in March. So some of the sentiments were really perfect for the things that were going on at this point in time. And I'm just adding them throughout the spread. I wanted to add one onto that title card because it just seemed like it was missing something, and just adding them onto some of the other photos just to make it more complete. Now I have this 4x6 photo of our 3 mugs of coffee when we went out. And this was actually a vertical photo that I rotated to print 4x6 because I had some 4x6 pockets on the spread and no horizontal photos. And I wanted to just fill one of them so that it made sense that I even had those pockets. So I have this bigger space to play with, and I wanted to do something with some larger embellishments. So I went into my chipboard organization, and I do have a video sharing how I organize my chipboard, but I have them in these categories, and they're in these little trays that can come out of my desk or out of the drawer to put on top of my desk when I'm working with it. And I went through the one that was beverage related and none of them worked. So then I decided to go through the other theme, which again, these are the more specific ones that are harder to use. And I found one that I liked the colors and the sentiment, and I felt like it looked good on that card. So I went ahead and added that with some word phrase strips. Finally, I just felt like that photo needed something else. So I went back into my paper scraps because I remembered seeing this paper in there. I had considered using it for one of my filler cards, but it was too brown, so I didn't want the brown behind the brown tags. But I liked it on this spread because it goes with the brown tags, and I thought it would be a cute little border across the bottom here. So I just cut a strip of it, and I'm making a border across the bottom of this photo, which adds just a little bit of whimsy. And I don't know, I think it looks pretty cute having that extra little piece on there. And that is going to wrap up this spread. What I'm going to do now is just go ahead and slip everything into the pockets and make sure that they all are trimmed down to fit. And I'm super happy with how this one came out. I'm super happy with the ability to use up some products from my stash, to use some of my scraps. I know I didn't make much of a dent in my scrap bin, but I definitely am going to try to use them a little bit more. As you've seen, I've had a few extra stash busting videos lately in my project life, and I want to do some stash busting, maybe spreads in my stories album. I'm thinking a little bit more about that, and if I want to do a stash busting series. So if you are interested in that, let me know in the comments and what you would want to see in a stash busting series, because I think that that would be kind of fun to put together and also help me kind of use up my products and encourage you to use up your products as well, because I think stash busting is something that a lot of people struggle with. It's always so easy to just gravitate towards the new products that are coming in, and there's so much fear of missing out that you don't want to purchase, that you want to purchase all the new products. And for me, I get a lot of products sent to me and I have to use them for creative team purposes. So it's hard to kind of find that time and that motivation to go back and use the older products. But I'm so happy when I do. These craft tags have been in my stash for years, and I do still have a few more of them, but it was super nice to be able to put a little dent in that stack. Here's a look at that completed spread. I really do love how this one came out. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And as always, I hope to see you guys all in the next one. Bye.